Hey guys, it's me and Gianna here, and we are here for our labor and delivery story. I'm sorry it's late, but I'm not gonna make excuses. We were just taking this time for ourselves and getting to know her and spending this time with her. So I just haven't had time to get this video together. And so I left everybody hanging for like a month, and I'm sorry. I should have went back and looked at where I left off, because I don't remember the last thing I told you guys. But I'm just going to get into, just start from the day that I was induced. So I think the last I had told you was that my doctor was probably going to induce me on April 28th, which was a Friday, and that's what ended up happening. So we had the appointment at 8 a.m. on Friday, April 28th. We left our house about 7. We got there a little bit before 8, and we got all checked in. They set up my IV, asked me a billion questions. I have my notes here. So, okay, so my birth plan, I'm going to make a separate video on how my birth plan differed from our actual labor and delivery. And basically, our labor and delivery was the complete opposite of, of our birth plan. So, but initially I wanted to have little to no medication, and looking back now, that was a pretty naive plan, being that I was being induced 3 weeks early. That was really just very naive of me to think that I could do this naturally. So anyways, we got there, like I said, a little bit before 8, got all set up. My doctor, well, it wasn't my actual doctor at that time. It was a midwife that was on call, not on call, but on duty. She came in about 10:15 and did a cervical check. At that time, at 10:15, I was 1 to 2 centimeters dilated, 50% effaced, and she was at a station -2. And I got my first dose of misoprostol at that time. After that, we just kind of waited around until about 2:50 p.m. So about 4 hours later, they came in and did another cervical check. I was still 1 to 2 centimeters dilated. I was 60% effaced. And they gave me my second dose of misoprostol. And then at about 7 p.m., they came back in and did another cervical check. And I was about 2.5 centimeters dilated, 60% effaced still. And they gave me my third dose of misoprostol. So at this point, we'd been there about 12 hours and made about 0.5 centimeter progress. So not very significant. And then at this time, by now, my doctor, my actual OB, she was on duty at about 5 p.m. So now she was here. And she checked me at 11 p.m. that night. I was still 2.5 centimeters dilated, but she said that her head was engaged. So she said that that was a little bit of progress. And that's when they gave me my fourth and final dose of the misoprostol. They can only give 4 doses, and I think it's every 4 hours. And then I had monitoring of her heart rate and my contractions being done every hour for 20 minutes, and then I could get off the monitors for an hour. And then my doctor came back in at 2:45 a.m. and did another cervical check. I was 3 centimeters dilated and 70% effaced, so still not much progress. So we decided to go ahead and start me on Pitocin, which I was so against and I really didn't want to do, but we'd almost been here for 24 hours and only made a centimeter dilation progress, so we needed to do something else. So we started the Pitocin at 3:20 a.m. And then my next note is my next cervical check, which wasn't until 12:45 p.m. the next afternoon, which was Saturday afternoon. And by then I was 3 centimeters dilated and 50% effaced, and she was at a station -2. Now this was a different midwife. This wasn't my actual OB. my OB, she left that morning. She came in and told me that she would be back in Sunday morning. And so she said, I'll be back in Sunday morning to meet this baby. And I was like, hopefully. So it was the midwife now, a different midwife. And so at 12:45, I told you what I was dilated, and she stripped my membranes at this time. By now, I'm on the maximum dose of Pitocin, the very highest, and I'm not feeling contractions at all. I'm definitely having them. They're about every 2 minutes, and they're lasting about 90 seconds because we can see them on the monitors, but I'm not feeling them at all. And so the rest of the day went on, and it was about 8:30 p.m. that the midwife came in and did another cervical check. I was still at 3 centimeters dilated, 50% effaced, and she was still at station -2. So I've been here for 36 hours. We've maxed out on the misoprostol and the Pitocin, and we had progressed about a centimeter. Not good at all. So this midwife, her plan, what she was explaining to me is that when I've been on the Pitocin for that long and that high of a dose, the receptors in my body kind of get flooded and my body just stops responding to it. So her idea was to cut off the Pitocin, let me eat something, because when you're on Pitocin you can't eat anything other than clear liquids, so like chicken broth and Jello, things like that. And so cut me off of that, let me eat something, let me get a really great night's rest, and then we'll start the Pitocin up in the morning, on Sunday morning. Oh, and in the meantime, we were going to start Cervidil, which is, it looks like a little piece of paper with a string on it, kind of like a tampon, and they put that in the cervix, and it's supposed to help with dilation and effacement, all of that stuff. So that was our game plan. We did that. They put the Cervidil in at 8:30 p.m. So about 11 p.m. the cramping started, and it was severe. It was the worst cramping I had ever felt in my entire life, and it was from like the top of my stomach down to my knees. Everything hurt. My stomach, my pelvic area, my butt, my back, my thighs, my hips, everything hurt. And it wasn't, and I kept telling them, like, I'm in a lot of pain, and they were like, oh, that's good, that's what we want to hear, we want to hear that. That means you're in labor. And I was like, no, these are not contractions. And like, being my first baby and our first delivery, I think I wasn't expected to know what contractions feel like, so any pain is supposed to be good pain. But it was just this constant, steady ache. It wasn't like a contraction where, you know, there's a lull and then it gets intense and then comes back down and you have a break. It wasn't like that at all. It was just a constant, steady, terrible pain. And so by 2:30 a.m. on Sunday morning, I called the midwife back in and I told her, you need to take this out. I can't do this. Like, this is just way too painful. And I don't think she wanted to. I think she wanted me to tough it out, but I literally could not do it. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't lay down. I got in the bath to try and relax. Like, I did everything I could to try and distract myself from that pain, and I couldn't. So she took that out about 2:30 a.m. And the cramping never got better. It was just awful. And the whole idea was so that I could stopping the Pitocin was so that I could get the rest and then start at it strong in the morning. That way I would have the energy to push when it was time to do that and deliver. And the whole purpose was just completely defeated because I was defeated by this point. So I called the nurse in at about 4 a.m. and she gave me fentanyl so that I could sleep, and it knocked me out and I slept great for about 4 hours. The nurse came in at about 8:30 a.m. to check on me and to see how I was doing, and to let me know that my doctor was going to be in about 9. And so my mom got there to about 8:30 and Mark woke up, and I was just telling them that I was done. Like, I couldn't do it. Like, I was so worn out and I felt so defeated, and like, I just couldn't keep going the way we were going. Like, something needed to give, like something needed to change. And then my doctor came in about 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, and I expressed this to her, and I was telling her, like, I'm just drained mentally, physically, like, I just can't do it. Like, I'm so, like, if by some miracle we get me dilated to 10 centimeters, like, I don't have the energy to push her out. Like, I know I'm so defeated right now. And so she said that we were going to set a timeline and a deadline of 5 p.m. that night, Sunday night. And if I hadn't made significant progress, that we were going to schedule a C-section that evening and just get her here. So having that made me feel great. Like, just knowing there was an end in sight and it was within the next 12 hours was a huge relief to me. And so she left, and then she came back about 10:15, and she did a cervical check then. And by now I was 4 centimeters, 80% effaced, and she was at a station -1. So still not much progress at all. That Cervidil obviously didn't do anything. And so we decided to have her break my water at that time. So she broke my water at 10:15 and a.m. As soon as she did that, and then they started me back up on the Pitocin at pretty heavy doses. And as soon as she did that, the contractions started, real contractions. And it was a terrible, terrible pain. Like, it was awful, and that was the whole reason I wanted to avoid the Pitocin, because I've heard how much more painful the contractions are when you're on Pitocin. But I was hopeful because I thought, okay, the more pain, the more progress we're making. So my doctor came back in at 3:15 and did another cervical check. And I want to talk about the cervical checks because nobody ever warned me how excruciatingly painful they are. And I don't know if it was because I wasn't progressing and she wasn't dropping, so they really had to stick their hand up there to check my cervix, but I cried every time they did a cervical check, and by the end of this, I dreaded it, absolutely dreaded it. I even refused a couple cervical checks just because I couldn't take it. Like, I needed a break. But anyways, okay, so she came back in at, 3:15. I was still 4 centimeters, 80% effaced, and station -1. So no progress, really, whatsoever. By now, I couldn't take the pain anymore, so I asked for an epidural, and I got that at about 4:10 p.m. And then my doctor came back in at 5, as we discussed, to see if I was making progress. And if I wasn't making progress, then we were going to schedule the C-section. And so she checked me. I was still 4 centimeters dilated, 80% effaced, and she was still at a negative station 1. As soon as she checked me, just the look on her face, like, I was like, it was obvious, like, where this was going. So, that's what we planned, and she said, so, okay, so we're going to go ahead and schedule the C-section for 5:30 p.m., which was in a half an hour. And, so she left, and Mark went downstairs to go get an energy drink because, he thought we had time. We had at least a good half hour before we were going to meet her. So, yeah, that happened, and then about 5:20 p.m., I got a strange feeling in my right butt cheek. It started feeling like this weird tingly feeling, and I felt like extreme pressure in my butthole. And I don't know if this is related or what, but the way the timeline went out, I'm thinking it is related. As soon as that happened, there was a nurse in there, and I told her, like, my butt feels weird, like, it feels numb. And she said, well, you just had an epidural, of course it feels numb, it's supposed to feel numb. And I was like, no, like, it doesn't feel like the rest of my body, like, it feels like something weird is happening. And she kept on saying, well, it's just, you got an epidural, that's why. And then after that, a whole bunch of other nurses started rushing in, and they were fidgeting with the monitors, and what happened was either they lost her heart rate completely or her heart rate plummeted. Like, it was very, very low. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening. One of the nurses just grabbed the oxygen mask and put it on my face, and nothing was being communicated to me. So she just put the oxygen on my face, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And then another nurse grabbed me and rolled me over to my left side, and she's like, I need you on your left side. And I was like, okay, like, calm down. And then they rolled me to my right side, and then my doctor came rushing in. Didn't say anything to me. She just spread my legs and shoved her hand right up there. And she was like, it was rough, really, really rough. And I'm not exactly sure what she was doing. I'm thinking, looking back on it, that she was checking for her umbilical cord to see if it had prolapsed or maybe was kinked or around her neck. Who knows? I don't know, but that's what I'm guessing. And then after she checked me or did that, she said, we gotta go now. We have to go now. So they start unplugging all of the stuff from the walls, and they're getting ready to wheel me out, and I'm freaking out. Mark's not there because he went downstairs. He thought we had time. And then they're wheeling me out, like, for this emergency C-section. And I just, like, looked over at my mom and started crying. It was so terrifying. Like, it was the scariest thing. Luckily, as we were, like, literally going out the door, Mark came walking in, and he was like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Like, we're going now? Like, confused because he thought we had time, you know? And everybody's rushing around and all this stuff, and they're throwing, like, the gown and the cap at him, and I'm like, let's go, we have to go. And he's like, what's going on? And I told him, you know, like, we lost her heart rate, or her heart rate dropped, I don't know. And so he just threw his phone and the keys and everything, and then went with me. I mean, he couldn't go into the operating room, so I'm not exactly sure what happened while they wheeled me into the operating room with him where he was. But they got me into the operating room, and my doctor was amazing. Like, she just kept telling me, like, just relax, because I'm crying, like, uncontrollably at this point, like, so terrified. And she just kept telling me, I need you to calm down, like, everything's okay, we're prepared for this, we do this every day, everything is fine, your baby girl's gonna be fine. And so we got into the operating room, and they got, you know, they put the curtain up, and one of the nurses puts the monitor on my belly, and she said, we have a heart rate, and she said it's 120 beats per minute. And so that was just a huge relief, knowing that they were able to find her heart rate. And I think that slowed things down, and it gave Mark the time to get dressed and get in there. And so he came in, and I was terrified that he was going to miss the birth and that I was going to have to be there alone for this. And so he got in there, the curtain was up, and they started cutting, and it was the oddest feeling I've ever felt. I kept saying, ow, ow, ow. And it didn't actually hurt, but it felt like it should hurt. And the weird stretching and pressure, and I felt like grinding, like, feelings. It was so strange. And then they pulled her out, and I heard them pull her out and say she's here, and then she started crying. And it was the most surreal, happiest moment ever, like, just to hear her cry and know that she was okay, because the minutes leading up to that were the most terrifying of my life. So hearing her be okay was, there are no words, like, there's no words to explain what a relief that was, and just to know that she was safe and she was okay. And so Mark went around with her, and they were doing the measurements, checking her measurements and everything, and her weight, and he was watching my doctor stitch me up, and the nurse kept asking him, like, you're okay to watch that? That isn't, you're not gonna faint or anything? And he was like, no, like, he finds that stuff so interesting, it's funny. And they asked him if he wanted to cut the umbilical cord, and he's like, well, yes, of course. And so he goes and cuts the umbilical cord, and then he goes right back to watching them stitch me up. It was interesting. So, yeah, And then once they got me all stitched up, they took us into the recovery. My mom and Mark's mom were there, and so as we were coming out, they got to see her for a second and know that everything was okay, because I was rushed out of the room and neither of them knew if we were okay. They did hear her cry when she came out too, so they had a feeling she was okay, but they got to see her. They took us to recovery. I was able to breastfeed immediately. She latched on perfectly. I'll talk more about that in like my postpartum updates, but yeah, and the next couple of days we were there until Tuesday. She was born Sunday. We were there till Tuesday morning. But yeah, that's it, guys. That's our labor and delivery story. So Miss Gianna Nicole is here. Let me fix your hair. She has a little bit of spit. We're dealing with some acid reflux. So, and like I said, I'll talk more about that in postpartum updates also. But our baby girl is here. This is Miss Gianna Nicole. She was born on Sunday, April 30th at 5:28 p.m. via emergency C-section. She was 6 pounds, 12 ounces, and 19¼ inches long. So she was a very healthy weight and size for being only 37 weeks. We were induced at 37 weeks. So she's super healthy, super happy. She just gave us that one scare, and that was enough. I don't need any more of that. But yes, guys, she's here, and we could not be happier. Say hi. Say hi, YouTube. Hi. No? She just ate, so she's kind of sleepy. But yeah, I guess that's it, guys. What is today? May 24th. She's a little over 3 weeks today, so on Sunday she'll be 4 weeks. So I'll work on our 1 month postpartum. She looks uncomfortable, huh? Am I thinking? Am I thinking? Wake up. Say hi and show them your beautiful eyes. Okay, guys. So, yeah, she's here. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this isn't too long. It is pretty long still, but anyways, yeah, we'll see you guys for my next update. Bye. Say bye, baby. Say bye, my baby.